Thank you, Sheila, for being a partner in ministry and everybody else who has participated in the service so far and is here. I've taken dancing lessons 4 times in my life. Once in preschool, in my pale pink leotard and white tights, but I was far more interested in playing outside in the dirt, so that didn't last long. Again in middle school, when my parents convinced me to take a ballroom dancing, very awkward for everyone involved. The 3rd time was to satisfy an arts requirement in college when I took a Martha Graham-inspired modern dance class and spent the entire semester doing 2 dance moves, both fairly agonizing, and that was enough to convince me never to take another dance class. But I did. The 4th and final time I took dancing lessons was with my partner George just before our wedding. We wanted to play a song by the Moldy Peaches for our first dance. Anyone else but you for any Moldy Peaches fans out there? There's some. I know some of you are thinking, what? We had no idea how to partner dance really, much less to that song. So we took a couple of classes. It was fun. We weren't good, but we didn't care. It was our song, and we were moving together, and that's all that really matters. UU minister Renee Ruhaki dances tango, and she writes, "You begin with your body leaning slightly forward. It's an intentional way to move in the world, really, with your body's center of gravity taking the lead, and the rest of your body poised to follow. Your steps are deliberate and measured. You stay in tune with your partner so that when it is time to move in a different direction, you will be able to move together. The dance of shared ministry invites both of you to play with the edges of your comfort zone." Ruhotsky goes on, "The dance requires both partners to communicate clearly. But in spite of even the best communication, the dancers have missteps, entanglements, unintended pauses. Some of the steps may be familiar, even habitual, but other steps might feel awkward at first. But when you are able to step into the flow of give and take, of awareness and adjustment, the dance of shared ministry becomes fluid and organic. When we practice open communication, embrace the awkward moments, expect missteps and entanglements, learn to recover and move into the flow of give and take, awareness and adjustment, shared ministry becomes fluid and organic, like a dance." In congregational ministry, of course, there aren't just 2 partners. It's a far more complicated dance, more like a starling murmuration, perhaps, when we're at our best. Although being the rather bumbling groundlings that we are, it is a little less graceful and ethereal. But it's a beautiful aspiration still, a beautiful model, as long as there are shared intentions and agreements. So what exactly do we mean by shared ministry? Jean Morris Trumbauer writes that ministry is our participation in the ongoing creative and restoring activity in the world. I love that definition. Ministry is our participation in the ongoing creative and restoring activity in the world. Of shared ministry, Trumbauer writes, "As members of a faith community, we are all invited to serve together in a spirit of mutuality as partners. Working cooperatively, we strive to discover, develop, utilize, and support the gifts of each person, and as responsible stewards, to participate in the ongoing creative and restoring activity in our communities and the world." Shared ministry is an ideal and a practice that emphasizes both individuality and interdependence. It affirms that different gifts are given to us as individuals and as collectives, and that our gifts are complementary and meant to be shared. Clergy or lay, religious professionals or volunteers, none of us can minister alone. We minister as partners, and in so doing, we become something more. The magic of a murmuration is greater than the sum of each starling. So too in ministry, when we practice it together. As Sheila said, this ideal of shared ministry isn't held by all religions or denominations. It reflects our historical roots in the radical side of the Protestant Reformation within Christianity. The idea that not just priests, but all the faithful could read Scripture, interpret it, teach it, and practice it. This idea has been described as the priesthood and prophethood of all believers. It's a very democratic idea and can be a little messy. If we're all priests and prophets, why do we bother with clergy? And what happens when we disagree? What will keep us from dividing into factions or dissolving altogether into extreme individualism? In theory, our covenants hold us together in our shared mission and vision of what we're about as a community. In our covenantal faith, we make promises to one another about living our shared values. And we create structures that we hope will help us uphold these promises in a spirit of love. It's beautiful in theory, but it's hard in practice. Although we share a common vision, we have different ideas about how we might move toward it. We struggle with questions of power and authority. Our religious ancestors were heretics, after all. It's in our religious DNA to question authority, but that can make it hard, too. We want to welcome different perspectives and life experiences, but we're all naturally biased toward what we know, toward the familiar. We're conditioned differently depending on our identities and backgrounds, and we all have different needs at different times. There are seasons to our lives, individually and collectively, that shape how we show up and even what we want from religious community. We all get anxious, but we deal with it differently. Same with conflict, change, grief, and uncertainty. Universal experiences, but various responses. So there are a whole lot of reasons why the dance of shared ministry isn't quite as smooth and graceful as we'd like it to be. But that doesn't mean we should quit the dance and go home. It just means we need to remember what it can be and why we are doing it. It also means we need to pause occasionally, get off the dance floor for a bit onto the balcony so we can get a better view of our patterns. Where do we flow? And where do we get stuck? Today we are focusing on shared ministry so we can better understand how we are dancing and to what effect. How do religious professionals, lay leaders, and volunteers share the ministry here? When have we been most in tune with each other? Where do we tend to fumble and misstep? When we get confused and entangled, which we will do every now and again, how do we respond? How open are we to learning new moves, new music? How ready are we for new dance partners, new leaders, and what they may or may not bring to the dance floor? One area many, if not all, UU congregations get tripped up is the relationship between clergy and laity. Of course we do. On the one hand, we have this radically democratic ideal and polity. We're all ministers, right, we say? We all share in the work of ministry. On the other hand, we have this unique role for the ordained minister, the religious professional. In our tradition, we don't believe ordination affirms a special relationship with the divine or a superior status as a human being. Otherwise, I would not be here. Maybe Red Cherry would, but I know I wouldn't. Nor do we believe ordination confers blanket authority in religious or congregational affairs. But we do recognize that religious leadership is important, that it behooves us to invest in religious leadership. because there are certain qualities and skills we want our religious leaders to have so they can fill the role we want them to play in our shared ministry. Once we install our leaders, though, we may feel conflicted about how much authority to grant them. And if we've been hurt before, we may have a hard time trusting our leaders, lay or ordained. Often, we have unrealistic expectations for our leaders. This isn't unique to congregations, of course. We humans seem prone to building pedestals for our leaders. We want heroes. There's a story that's often told about this. I'll give you my version of it. One day, a denominational staff member received a request for help from a congregation in their region. Please help us find our next minister, the congregational leaders said. The last one had a breakdown and we're a mess. I'm sorry to hear that, said the denominational staff member. Let me see if I can help. What kind of minister are you seeking? And the leaders readily answered, for they were clear about what they wanted. We seek a young minister with wisdom and experience. Someone who will bring fresh ideas and preserve our traditions. One not afraid to speak their mind, who will cause no offense. Someone who fits in well and makes us more diverse. One who delivers intellectually challenging sermons that are accessible to everyone. Someone with spiritual depth and knowledge of all religions. A pastor with a big heart who isn't overly sensitive. A good fundraiser who doesn't ask too much. A strong administrator with a gentle touch. A prophet who doesn't stir things up. Someone who attracts young families and won't leave aging members behind. A minister with good boundaries who always shows up. A dedicated minister who models good self-care and a healthy family life. Said the denominational staff member. And how many positions did you say you have open? Oh, said the lay leaders, we have money for about 20 hours a week. It's funny, but it's also true, isn't it? It's true. And no one is all that. No one can do all that. No one. But together, we can approximate it. Together, we probably do have all those qualities and characteristics, or at least most of them. One of our tasks during this transition time is to determine which qualities and skills we have in abundance already and which we most need in our next professional ministry to round out the dance. Ideally, this is how we would approach all our ministries here, the board, governance committees, staff, and ministry teams. What perspectives and skills and experiences are present already, and which ones might we want to recruit, to develop, or improve, to improve the dance? How can we set ourselves up for success in our shared ministry? We do so many things well here already. We have teams for most aspects of ministry: worship, pastoral care, religious exploration, connections, and social justice. We have small group ministries, teams to lead our facilities, our finances, and our fundraising. We have a staff team, a transition team, and a committee on ministry that focuses on the overall health of our shared ministry. Our board holds fiduciary responsibility and works in partnership with the professional ministers to carry out the mission. That is all very good. And we have the opportunity to go on the balcony and look down at the dance floor so we can think about how we might make it even better. Rev Terry and I go up there a lot onto the balcony. It's part of our job. And we've invited you up there with us this year to observe the patterns so you can make informed decisions about your future. The patterns we are focused on today relate to how we share the work of ministry. The relationships between religious professionals, lay leaders, and volunteers here at UUSM, past, present, and future. Rev Terry will be leading us into more reflection and conversation on this at noon, so please come. We need everyone for this next dance. If you're a little unsure about all this, if you don't like dancing or the word ministry to describe what we do, that's okay. Please come anyway. It just takes some imagination and a willingness to show up, awkwardness and all, just like dancing. It takes humility, some give and take, and humor helps too, and love, lots of love for ourselves and others. And it takes imagining a future we want to create together. May it be so.